Yvonne. She was on the 94th floor. She was an Amex employee who worked at Marsh McLennan. Please, somebody from any floors from 88 and up, please call our number 917-364-4906 and tell us what happened over there. And if anybody got out and if anyone made it, please call us. We're looking for her. Please, 917-364-4906. Yvonne Bonomo, she is a great girl, and we have hope we're gonna find her.
Tell me what you've done. Have you searched through the city?
We were everywhere. We went to the hospital. We registered her. We've called hospitals. Please, if anyone on the 94th floor got out, please call us and let us know our parents are beside themselves at home. We're waiting to hear anything, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell me, your sister. You're looking for
My
your sister.
sister, Bridget Esposito. She sat right next to Yvonne Bonomo on the 94th floor at One World Trade Center. The last time I spoke to her was at 20 to 8 before the blast, just like a regular day, and I haven't heard from her since then.
And tell me what you've done to search for her?
I've been to every hospital in the city. We went to 28th and 1st Avenue yesterday and registered her. We've been on several TV channels begging people that if they see her, to find her for me. If anyone finds her, please call 718-436-9177 for Michael Esposito, or Yvette at 718-339-6380.
Ma'am, do you still have hope?
I have a lot of hope. She's also with her best friend, Ben Valentine. He sits right next to Bridget and Yvonne as well. So if anybody sees him, call our families. We're looking desperately for them.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, you were looking for Sal.
I'm looking for my son, Sal. He left home that morning and he hasn't called back since then. He's a cadet. He's a trained EMT, and most probably as soon as he came into Manhattan, he just flagged someone down to go down and help the people in the World Trade Center bombing thing, just to help people take them out. He's a trained EMT. If anybody has seen him, most probably he's helping people.
So he was near the building at the time of the explosion and went in to help people?
That's what I think, because he usually comes into Manhattan like about 9:15, 9:20, and then he has to take the 6 train to go uptown. So most probably he flagged someone to go downtown to help assist in the rescue. So if anybody has seen him, if they would just call us at 718-225-7883, even if they just seen him assisting somebody over there.
Tell me how old Sal is.
He's 23 years old. He just graduated from college and he just found a job at Rockefeller University.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Sir, tell me who you're looking for.
I'm looking for Pablo Ortiz. He works at the World Trade Center on the 88th floor. He called his wife early in the morning on Tuesday, told the 88th floor was being evacuated. He was leaving. He left and they never found him again. They never haven't seen him.
Right here?
Yes, gentleman right there with my mother. And we've been looking for him. And my sister's been doing all of that work, and I finally got out, and it's hard, and and if anybody's seen him, just call the number one here, 1212-673-1292. Anybody.
Do you still have hope, sir?
Do I have hopes? Yes, I have hopes, and I don't know. It took me 2 days to get out of my house to do this, so it's hard. I can understand why these people are suffering and crying. It's hard. It's hard for these people. It's hard for me. I don't know. I shake.
It took you 2 days, meaning you just emotionally could not get out of your house.
I made it to my mother's house down on Lower East Side, and I just made it started walking today. I just started walking today. My sister's been doing it for 2 days, and she's got a lot of hope, and I'm just picking up on where she left off.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, New York.
Joey, as you can tell, it is just an endless sea of people who are looking for their loved ones, who are doing anything they can to find some sign, any sign. Joey?
Elizabeth Cohen at the Armory. Elizabeth, stand by there. We see so much emotion in those people around you. It is just,
You can see the desperation, and you can hear the hope in their voices. And sometimes when they don't
putting
talk,
up their pictures.
yeah, and sometimes when they don't talk, they just stare, and you can see their faces being so empty. But this is clearly a human side to the story, Elizabeth. It was about 2.5 hours ago when we first saw your initial interview. We were quite struck by not only your interview, but also the reaction. And to give the folks at home a better indication of what, quite honestly, we go through covering a story like this, we want to take you back 2.5 hours ago now.
My father knew how to operate the rig, so he brought down all the workers to inspect the building.
If you think your father might be out there somewhere, what would you want to say to him?
I want to tell him that we all miss him. His little nephew, Luke, misses him. And that we're strong. We got hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, I've been talking to these families for 2 days now, and all of these stories are very much like this. People are just hoping that their relatives are out there somewhere, and they're begging us to talk about them, to show their pictures, hoping that if someone's seen them, that they might be able to identify them and give some information. Aaron?
Elizabeth, that was 2.5 hours ago, as we mentioned, and I know it must be extremely difficult for you, having a family back here in Atlanta, to hear these stories. But you're serving a purpose there, and you're giving them hope to get their message out. And the thing that strikes me is the number of people who stick their pictures inside the camera frame in order to see, hey, maybe there's someone watching somewhere who may recognize their loved one.
And I see so much politeness in what they're doing. I mean, everybody knows that other people are suffering too. Nobody's shoving anyone else out of the way. They all have a story to tell, but they seem to be giving each other a chance.
I can't hear anything. You can tell Miriam what you'd like me to talk about.
Okay. All right, Elizabeth, we're going to let you go there. We apologize for that, but indeed that's the human element that we're seeing throughout this. And believe me, it's just begun at this point.
Yeah.
Because these stories will continue to trickle out by the thousands at some point.
Well, we want to give our viewers another opportunity. If there is a chance that your picture has not been seen, those who have relatives still missing, we're quite concerned. CNN is trying to open up an opportunity for our viewers to be able to get those pictures out on the internet. We know that there are some internet services that have not been quite credible. This is a CNN.com service. If you can email us the picture of your missing loved one at missing@cnn.com, missing@cnn.com. That's the address to send in your picture if you have a missing person that you're looking for. And please, we do ask that people try to use this system judiciously and honestly. There's so many people who suffered so much loss. Please do not use this unless you really have a need to. Also, CNN.com, there's a link there. If you go to CNN.com, there's a link there to get your picture used on the web. And if there's any chance,
it's quite likely also, as we look at the quick vote online, we're just taking the pulse in a very unscientific fashion here at CNN.com about what Americans feel about what they're seeing and hearing and watching throughout the week. This is a question: what are your feelings about Tuesday's terrorist attacks? And you can see the options there: shock, sorrow, or anger. And clearly, nearly half are saying at this point they feel anger. And Joey, just from knowing this quick vote over the past year, typically we might have 30,000 to 40,000 votes there, but this is well over 500,000. And what we saw earlier was, initially a feeling of disillusionment on Tuesday into Wednesday, but clearly it's into anger at this point.
We'll move quickly now to the White House. John King has some late information there. John.
Well, Joey, this is a fast-developing story, and we have seen over the past several hours the many facets of this the president has to deal with. First and foremost, let's give you some breaking information about new security concerns here at the White House. Earlier this afternoon, the Secret Service, unannounced, suddenly went back out across the street, cleared Lafayette Park and the area around Pennsylvania Avenue. All vehicle traffic now moved back from the White House. And as these new security precautions were put in place, Secret Service saying this is part of an ongoing security operation. Other sources, however, though, say they were concerned about another possible threat on the White House grounds. As all that took place outside of the White House, the administration made a decision to take Vice President Dick Cheney off the White House grounds and move him to the presidential retreat at Camp David, Maryland. The president stayed here and kept working. The decision was made, though, that they did not want the president and the vice president in such close proximity at a time when they were concerned about another possible threat on the White House grounds. Now, again, the president stayed inside as all this played out. We know he has spoken to several world leaders today, also met with his national security team, and sources telling us the administration moving ahead in those discussions on two fronts. One, discussions with military planners about possible retaliatory strikes, but also this administration talking about what one senior official told us a short time ago is fundamentally different from anything the United States has ever done before responding to terrorism. All those phone calls to world leaders, part of an effort by the president and the administration to build an international coalition. They're talking about years-long effort now to choke off, in the words of one official, the safe harbor provided to terrorists and the financial support provided to terrorists. Now, as part of all this, the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, called the president of Pakistan today. Pakistan neighbors Afghanistan. Afghanistan is the home of Osama bin Laden. Mr. Powell told the president of Pakistan if he wanted to follow through on a promise of cooperation that he should close the borders with Afghanistan, that he should stop supplying fuel to the Taliban government in Afghanistan, and that he should grant permission for U.S. military warplanes, if necessary, to use Pakistani airspace. All this planning taking place, as another senior official tells us, one reason the administration has not retaliated yet is that there, quote, might have been not one but multiple organizations involved in this. So the investigation continuing, and earlier this morning in the Oval Office, the president choked up as he spoke to reporters and considered the enormity of the challenge ahead.
I think about the families, the children. I'm a loving guy, and I'm also someone, however, who's got a job to do, and I intend to do it. And this is a terrible moment, but this country will not relent until we have saved ourselves and others from the terrible tragedy that came upon America.
Now, despite the obvious renewed security concerns here at the White House, Mr. Bush still planning to leave the grounds tomorrow and travel up to New York to assess the devastation and to get a first-hand update on the relief and recovery effort. Bill, Joey.
John King for us out at the White House this evening.
Also in Washington, Judy Woodruff. Judy.
Bill, joining us now from the Capitol, the senator from the state of New York, Hillary Clinton. Senator Clinton, we've been listening to some heartbreaking stories from people looking for loved ones. Can you bring us any new information about recovery efforts there?
Well, Judy, they continue. Even as we speak, they will continue as long as it is humanly possible to hope that we can find any survivors. We had some good news today when we found some of our firefighters and another citizen. So we are far from giving up on this aspect of the search and rescue mission.
Senator, what price do you now believe New York will ultimately pay in terms of lives, its economy, its financial well-being, and so forth?
Well, Judy, it's devastating. And of course, this was not only an attack on New York, but an attack on America. And because New York is the global city and, you know, an engine of American economic growth, this is a loss that's going to be felt throughout the country and even the world. But directly at home, where we've suffered the most grievous losses, there is not any inventory of any kind yet. We are going about the painstaking business, as I saw firsthand yesterday when I visited with the mayor and the governor, of trying to make sure we account for every person. The necessity to really know who may be missing is bringing people down near the site to the Armory on Lexington Avenue, where they can register and give information about their loved ones. But I think we're at the beginning of what will be a very emotional time for our country, because the horror of seeing the planes crash into the towers, the unbelievable, just a moment of sheer horror in watching the buildings collapse, is now going to be made even more painful, because we're going to have faces to go with those people who were just going about their daily business, doing their jobs, and we're also going to know more about the individual firefighters and police officers and Port Authority officers and emergency technicians, all of whom lost their lives. The economic costs are just beginning to be calculated. I was very grateful today when the President agreed with a request that Senator Schumer and I made for an additional $20 billion in the supplemental appropriation to deal with the overwhelming costs, principally in New York, but also New Jersey's been affected, other places.
So we're talking about, what, the neighborhood of $40 billion now?
Yes, and 20 of that will go for purposes such as beefing up our intelligence, repairing the Pentagon, the military assets we need, making it clear that we're going to afford whatever security precautions are necessary at our airports, and then $20 billion will go to the kind of rescue, reconstruction, rebuilding, counseling efforts that are going on right now in New York.
Senator, we're hearing from President Bush, from Secretary Powell and others at the Pentagon and elsewhere in the administration that no effort will be spared, in effect, to go after the people who were responsible for this. Are you prepared to give the president, in essence, a green light to do whatever he and the people around him think is necessary to find these people?
Well, I'm going to support the president's authority to wage war on these terrorists, and wherever they are, root them out and make clear that anyone who provides comfort or financial aid is going to pay a price. We're in the process of drafting the resolution. I've consulted with some of my colleagues who've been here a lot longer than I, who went through the Gulf War and even before, to know exactly the best way to go about doing that. But we're going to come to agreement behind the president to give him the authority and the resources as commander-in-chief that he requires.
What about a threshold of evidence? Is that something that is a factor here?
Well, Judy, you know, this is not a legal case. You know, I used to practice law in another life, and we're not, you know, we're not putting together the kind of case that we would take to a jury necessarily. Certainly, we are painstakingly acquiring whatever evidence is available. But I'm not sure that it would be appropriate or prudent for the United States to just pursue this legally, to try to, as we did with the first incident at the World Trade Centers, the bombing, you know, spend years tracking down the perpetrators, bringing them back to justice. This is much more like the bombings of our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. This is an act of war, and I think we have to respond accordingly.
Senator, finally, there was an Associated Press report today saying, quoting senior officials as saying in the final days of President Clinton's administration, your husband's administration, that there was specific intelligence about the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden, that it was discussed whether to take action, and ultimately a decision was made not to attack. Do you have any information about that?
Well, Judy, I'm not privy to all the information. I know that there was intelligence about his location. There was a plan that was put into place to try to pinpoint his location. It relied, as I recall, on human intelligence assets, namely people who were on the ground providing us with information. And my memory is that at the last minute, those assets proved unreliable and were not able to form the basis for the kind of firm footing that is needed for launching the sort of attack that we are considering. That is how I remember it, but as I say, I wasn't in the thick of it. But I do remember very well we acted similarly with respect to the cruise missiles that were launched at his camps in Afghanistan based on intelligence that he would be there at the time. It was very well thought out and planned, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, he turned out not to be there. And I want to just add that this is part of the challenge that our current president faces. We are engaged in a battle with an adversary who lives in the shadows. When we were bombed at Pearl Harbor, we knew where the enemy was. And not only does he have his own assets, but because of his considerable wealth and connections with regimes and organizations around the world, he does have his own intelligence network, people within governments and military operations who frankly keep him apprised of what we or anyone else are interested in. So that's one of the reasons why I really support the kind of painstaking, patient approach that the president is pursuing. I know there are some who think, you know, we should be able to, you know, launch an attack, press a button tonight. But that's not the way this can be done, and I think all Americans have to be resolute. We have to be prepared for the action that will come, and very supportive of those working with the president who are putting together the pieces, as difficult as that is, to give us the basis for action.
All right, Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton of New York talking to us from the U.S. Capitol just a little over an hour after the Capitol had to be evacuated because of a threat. Senator, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you. And now back to Bill in Atlanta.
Judy, thank you. Senator Clinton mentioning the name Osama bin Laden. We have heard his name so many times lately. We have also heard about the group known as the Taliban back in Afghanistan. But how is it that this group and this man could intersect with the lives of ordinary Americans? CNN's Christiane Amanpour now with a bit of history.
When the Soviet Union invaded the treacherous and mountainous terrain of Afghanistan on the eve of the 1980s, it quickly found its own Vietnam. This superpower was taken on and eventually forced out by a network of Afghan guerrilla groups known as the Mujahideen. The Cold War was still on, and the United States helped recruit these resistance fighters through its allies in the region, allies like Pakistan, which borders Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden was one of those fighters, and after the war with the Soviets, he took control of the guerrilla network, which was swelled by fighters from all over the Islamic world.
Bin Laden's group grew out of the Mujahideen forces that were trained initially by the Pakistani intelligence services and the Pakistani military, and also, of course, funded by the United States.
But the United States is faulted for failing to track the growing ranks of radical Muslim guerrillas once the Soviet occupation ended. Afghanistan then descended into civil war and eventually split into two main blocs. On one side, the Northern Alliance, a loose network of ethnic minorities, nominally led by the charismatic Ahmad Shah Massoud, known as the Afghan mastermind of the Soviet defeat. He has not been seen since a bomb attack by assassins last week. On the other side, the Taliban, a fundamentalist Islamic movement representing the ethnic majority. They captured the capital, Kabul, in 1996 and are now in control of almost all Afghanistan. But their repressive regime, particularly their harsh treatment of women, have earned them almost universal condemnation. The West also accuses the Taliban of harboring Osama bin Laden, America's enemy number one. Pakistan is one of only 3 countries recognizing the Taliban as the legitimate government, and now it's under intense pressure from the United States to get the Taliban to give up bin Laden.
We regard terrorism as an evil that threatens the world community. Concerted international effort is needed to fight terrorism in all its forms and manifestations.
Experts point out the Taliban itself is divided between hardliners and some who would prefer more cooperation with the West. Some analysts believe the United States should now offer ultimatums and incentives to the Taliban to give up bin Laden, at least as a first measure before a military attack. Christiane Amanpour, CNN, London.
Christiane helping us with our understanding of the Taliban, Osama bin Laden, and all the key players who may or may not be connected to all this. We want to go immediately now to the Justice Department coverage from CNN's Kelly Arena, who is our Justice correspondent. There's some new developments on that front. Kelly.
Joey, we just found out from New York City police officials and FBI sources that there has been an arrest made at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City of a man who was purportedly trying to use fake pilot credentials. There are also, we are told, up to 5 or 6 people that have been detained. They are being questioned by the FBI. Those people had tried to either board flight, had bought tickets, tried to board flights when their names were punched into airport computers. Security red flag was raised. We don't know why. It could have been immigration. It could be for a variety of reasons. But those people were detained and are now being questioned. Earlier today, the FAA had issued a ground stop on all New York City area airports, and now the details are finally trickling out as to why that action was taken. Joey?
Is there a further update on the airports themselves, Kelly?
No, I don't, Joey. I've been covering the law enforcement angle on this story.
All right. Well, CNN's Kelly Arena, our justice correspondent, following up in details on that. Thanks very much, Bill.
Joey, we saw a plane leave Dulles International Airport. I think it was 2.5 hours ago. Air Nippon leaving back for Tokyo, Japan. Going to go there now. Kathleen Koch stationed there. Kathleen, what do you have for us now?
Bill, the FAA has announced that the closest airport to the nation's capital, Reagan National Airport, will now remain closed for the foreseeable future. They're saying that that decision has been made because of, quote, its proximity to key federal installations, including the Pentagon. Now, what that will mean is that anyone in the Washington, D.C. area wanting to try to fly out will have to come here to Dulles International Airport or go to Baltimore, Washington International Airport. Now, as you mentioned, the first flights finally started departing here about 5:30 this evening, an All Nippon Airways flight bound for Tokyo, Japan, and people were indeed very relieved to get on it and be able to leave. So things are beginning to get back to business here, though, albeit on a much smaller scale than normal. You are seeing people lining up at the ticket counters. You are seeing people, of course, no curbside check-in. That has been eliminated. And very interestingly, some people are getting quite a surprise when they approach the security screening checkpoints. Not only now are knives and box cutters no longer allowed in carry-on baggage, any sharp metal object is banned. So we saw numerous men opening up their shaving kits and throwing out razor after razor into the trash can. And what is very telling, Bill, is the fact that the people who are manning these checkpoints told us that they have not had one single passenger complain about that at all today. One woman who is confiscating those razors said that when it comes to security, that now people really do understand. Another thing that we have noted here at the airport is that as across America, American flags are popping up everywhere. We are seeing them. There are two of them hanging on the control towers. They're popping up behind the departure counters. This airport is under construction, so construction cranes are actually flying the American flag, even ground crew vehicles that are moving around. So, Bill, we are seeing here that, again, as in New York, as across the country, there is a real determination to express that feeling that America is not giving up and will persevere.
Kathleen,
Bill?
Got a call from my sister yesterday in Cleveland, Ohio, saying a Walmart there was handing the flags out for free for anyone who came into the store. Curious to know from the passengers that you've talked to today, do they have any apprehension about climbing back on board one of these planes, 757, a 767 and the like?
Bill, we talked to passengers here yesterday who were coming to pick up their bags, asking them that question, and then passengers leaving today. And to a person, everyone said they believe that now with this additional security that's being implemented, that they will be safer than, say, they would have been flying on Monday. That does not mean that they're not nervous. It does not mean that they're not apprehensive. But they believe that what's been done, at least, is a good step toward making the entire nation safer when they fly.
Kathleen Koch, live at Dulles. Kathleen, thanks. When you get more, let us know. I want to also let our viewers know at this time, we reported about an hour ago at JFK International Airport outside of New York City there. Several men have been detained for questioning about all the information we have at this point. But in addition to that, numerous FBI officials responded to JFK, and as a result, LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark, the three major airports serving the New York City area, have been shut down at this point. Again, we anticipated flights to continue from there, but to this point, that has not been the case. We'll keep you posted as soon as we get more information here. Now, Joey.
And CNN continuing to watch on all fronts the latest developments. Of course, we'll bring those to you as soon as they come in to us. Right now, another group watching over all that has been happening, shaping up since Tuesday, is our Crossfire gang. Joining us now is CNN's Bill Press.
Thank you, Joey, very much. Together with all the sorrow and the anger and the rage that we Americans feel about Tuesday's terrorist attacks against this country, we also have a lot of questions about how something like this could happen and how we might respond. Tonight, we turn for answers to two United States senators. Joining us first, Senator Chuck Hagel, Republican from the state of Nebraska and ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and Senator Bob Graham, the Democrat from Florida, who's chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Bob Novak.
Senator Graham, we have had some interesting developments today. The Senate was evacuated. The House of Representatives was evacuated. Several government buildings downtown was evacuated. Several blocks have been cordoned off downtown. Now we hear the word the Reagan National Airport may be closed indefinitely. And the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, was spirited off to Camp David. Can you tell us, as Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, is something going on, or are we just a little bit nervous after the catastrophe of Tuesday?
Bob, I can tell you that Tuesday was not a single chapter event, that there is still the possibility of further events, terrorist attacks, not necessarily of the same form, directed against the American people. And therefore, this heightened sense of alert that we've seen so much of today is very much warranted.
But no specific events?
No, there's no specific target of where, when, who, or how.
Senator Graham, as far as a retaliation goes, are we talking about a surgical Delta Force taking out some terrorists, or are we talking more of a military operation, heavy bombing, cruise missiles?
Senator, I'm sorry, we have to interrupt. We have to go back to CNN for breaking news, and we go to CNN's Jamie McIntyre. Jamie?
John? Well, Bill, in an interview that's going to air tonight on CNN's Larry King Live, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said that the United States has fighter planes on 15-minute strip alert at 26 bases around the country. And Pentagon sources tell me tonight that the Pentagon is considering a substantial call-up of reservists, in part to provide air crews and pilots to continue to man those planes as they sit on the runway in preparation just in case something happens. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld does say that he has discontinued the combat air patrols of fighter planes over most U.S. metropolitan areas. However, those fighter planes are still flying in the New York to Washington corridor. Again, it appears the Pentagon is considering a call-up of a significant number of reservists, not just though for pilots and air crews, but also other areas of specialty where they need assistance. Already about 10,000 National Guard troops have been called up by the state's governors, by governors in 31 states, but the activation of reservists is something that can only be done by presidential order. The last time it was done was in the 1991 Persian Gulf War, when over 200,000 reservists were called up. Bill?
Thank you, Jamie. Bob, pick up there.
That question. Are we considering a commando-type Delta Force raid on the guerrillas or a big military operation?
This is not going to be a pinprick, Bob. Our nation was struck in a way that we have not experienced since Pearl Harbor, more loss of life in a single day, any day since Antietam in the Civil War within the continental United States. This was a crushing blow directed at the American people, and there will be an equivalent response. And those who have harbored and supported and assisted and allowed these terrorists to act will be treated as terrorists.
Senator Hagel, I'd like to, you heard Jamie McIntyre's report about these planes saying by people being called up. Is this a proper response? Are you surprised at this? Did you know about this?
I did not know about it specifically. We were told generally this was a very viable option. It is an appropriate response. What Senator Graham has laid out here is exactly right. I think we have to face the facts here, that not only do we have a short-term issue here, but probably more importantly, this is a long-term fight against organized terrorism worldwide. All the appropriate responses that we must put together now to deal with this we have to consider. So what they're doing, I think, is exactly the right thing.
Senators, we're going to bring CNN's Jamie McIntyre back into our discussion. Jamie, can you tell us again, when is this effective?
Well, right now, there has not actually been a final decision made, but Pentagon sources say that they are working the process of drawing up a plan to call up several thousand reserves to fill in some of these positions. Part of this may depend on whether Defense Secretary Rumsfeld believes it's necessary to continue to have these fighter planes on what's called strip alert at bases across the country. But even if that is discontinued, there are some special areas in which the U.S. military has some specialties, some water purification, perhaps in air traffic control, or logisticians, or even medical support that might be needed, and the Pentagon is considering a call-up of reserves reserves for those kinds of tasks as well.
And is this accompanied by any increased activity or calls for alert around the world of U.S. forces, Jamie?
Well, U.S. forces have been on pretty high alert around the world. In fact, Pentagon sources tell me that yesterday the U.S. was at what's called DEFCON 3, which is the third highest level of alert. According to sources, we've come down to DEFCON 4 today, 5 being the lowest, 1 being the highest level of alert. So the U.S. military is still on pretty high alert around the country, but I think that this call-up of reservists is more tied to getting people with special skills into areas where they can be some help as we've beefed up the military presence around the world.
And I guess final question, is this any sign that any military response on the part of the United States is imminent?
Well, the Pentagon, the State Department, the White House have all dropped lots of signs that a military response is in the future. I'm not sure how imminent it is. I think this is really just a signal of the fact that the military is getting a lot more attention. It's going to be getting a lot more funding. They're going to try to bring everything up to a greater state of readiness so that when the United States feels it is capable of acting, it'll be fully ready to act.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks very much. Back to Senator Hagel and Senator Graham.
I'd like to ask both the senators, both familiar with intelligence. Former CIA Director Jim Woolsey has said that he thinks there is a state supporting this terrorism which struck us on Tuesday, and he said a good suspect, is Iraq. Senator Hagel, do you think that Iraq may be involved in this?
I don't know, but I think we need to take what Mr. Woolsey says very seriously. It seems to me that we must include all possibilities in this net as we examine the facts and get the facts so that we can react with facts. I don't know if Iraq was involved or not, but they certainly should be examined pretty closely.
What do you think the pattern of terrorism, Bob, is that most of the significant terrorist cells around the world do have some linkage back to a sovereign nation that can provide them with financial support, with safe havens if those are required. Our policy is, as it should be, that a state which provides support to a terrorist is treated as a terrorist, and the retaliation will be the same.
We've had a long history with Iraq, though. I just wondered if you think that is a possibility. A lot of people say that Saddam Hussein may be a bad guy, but he's not crazy, and to be involved in this is signing his own death warrant, considering our power. How do you gentlemen feel on that?
Well, one thing is quite obvious, and it was very clear Tuesday evening. This was a very sophisticated operation, unlike anything the world, quite frankly, has ever seen. The infrastructure, the training, the financing, all the information gathering, intelligence that went into this was pretty significant. Now, that could very well lead to a state-sponsored involvement, not maybe the front line of this, but certainly something in the dark recesses of the background.
In answer to your question, I would say Iraq has to be on any short list of suspect states that have been providing that support.
Speaking of intelligence, that's one area where many people feel that we were let down. I'd like you to listen to one of your colleagues, Congressman James Traficant, who always puts it colorfully, had to say about the failure there of our intelligence community. Here he is.
America gives $60 billion a year to the FBI and CIA for intelligence. And the truth is, we learned of every one of these tragedies from Fox News and CNN.
With zero intelligence on our part, Senator.
I defer to the chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
First, we may well find, when all the facts are in, that there has been a serious failure of intelligence. We have known for some time that there were areas of considerable weakness in our intelligence capacity, particularly spies, the fact that our listening devices were becoming technologically out of date, and that we were not able to analyze but a small percentage of the information that we collected. Those are serious deficiencies, which I am pleased to say that we started several months ago identifying and developing a 5-year plan to correct, and I imagine that the events of Tuesday are going to accelerate that 5-year plan.
Let me ask you, Senator, a couple of Republican senators today are reportedly seeking support to call for the resignation of CIA Director George Tenet because the fact that we were caught flat-footed. Do you join that call tonight?
No, I don't. I think that's premature. We will get the facts here through, obviously, the appropriate hearings and means, and Senator Graham and other committee chairmen will be involved in that, as will all the appropriate committee members. But I would only make this observation. It has been 25 years, over the last 25 years, that we have seen a constant erosion of human intelligence. Now, that term gets bandied around often, and Senator Graham knows an awful lot about this business. But in fact, I think because we are so without human intelligence, it may very well be that that was one of the prime factors here that has produced this gap somewhat.
Just for people who haven't been listening, we're talking about spies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're talking about different types of spies. We're talking about those that are U.S. nationals who are employees of our intelligence agencies. We're also talking about spies who we recruit who are foreign nationals. And there we have some legal limitations. Today, if a potential foreign spy who has offered himself to work for us has had a bad background, and frankly most of these people didn't come out of monasteries, then they are rendered ineligible to be hired by the United States.
And that's a bad policy, isn't it, Senator?
If you're going to attack terrorists, you're going to be dealing with people. You're going to be dealing with people who are dirty, or they wouldn't have the access to get inside
That's going
the
to be
cell.
changed.
I hope so. That is not a law. That is a policy of the CIA.
Senator Graham, William Bennett, who was a former cabinet member, a man I respect, was on this network last night, and he said something which rather startled me about the possible targets of retaliation. And let's just listen to it. Senator Bennett. William Bennett.
It's not just these individuals and groups, but it's these nations, these states that sponsor or support. That could be a lot of people. That could be Syria. That could be Libya. That could be Lebanon. That could be Iraq and Iran. It could be China.
Now, I have General Bennett declaring war against Islam and China. That's, if you add them all up, that's about 2 billion people. I know he didn't mean to attack them all at once, but is that something we have to be careful about, of isolating ourselves so that we are against, we are really separating ourselves from a large part of humanity in this?
Well, what we need to do is to be very careful that when we have identified the perpetrator of this horrific event, that we are able to establish beyond a doubt who it was. Because we're going to be trying to get the world community, starting with NATO, to come together in a common cause against terrorism. We can't attack 2 billion people around the world, but we can attack a nation that we have uncontested evidence has been harboring and supporting terrorists.
We can't attack somebody just because we don't like them.
That's right. We've got to have the irrefutable evidence.
My question to you, Senator Hagel, we huffed and we puffed after the bombing of our embassies in Africa, and we bombed Sudan and Afghanistan, and it turns out we bombed the wrong targets and we killed a lot of innocent people. How do we know we'll get it right this time?
Well, we don't, is the quick answer. But I am confident that the maximum effort and focus and resources will be put into this. It must be put into this, using our international coalition that's being put together. Essentially, it's the coalition of the civilized world, Bill, that we're dealing with here, that we must put together in order to drive a stake through the heart of this scourge.
But here's what I've seen happen: that we get angry and we strike maybe a pinprick or something, Osama bin Laden, but he's still on the prowl. Go after Saddam Hussein, he's still in power. Will we have the resolve to this time to stick with it and finish the job?
Bill, we must. I said earlier, Senator Graham has said the same thing. This is a long-term effort. We must make no mistake. America must understand the free world. This isn't a one-month project.
Yeah, and I think what we've got to also understand, this was not a passing event that occurred on Tuesday. I think this was a real turning of the pages of history. The last page had words like innocence and assumption of invulnerability. This new page has under attack, and we've got to act as a nation which is under attack on our own soil.
Gentlemen, we've been talking about an intelligence failure. There's also a security failure when you have 4 hijackings in one day. And of course, as we today, tremendously tight security restrictions were being put into effect on American airports. How intelligent they were, I'm not sure. Do you have any concern, either of you, that the victim of all this is going to be the American air traveler, and that you won't have appreciably more security, but it'll make traveling a lot more difficult?
Well, I would make one observation. We are the most open, mobile society probably in the history of mankind. We cherish our individual rights and liberties and conveniences, quite frankly. What we must find is a balance between preserving those individual liberties and the security of our institutions, our state, and our people.
Just quickly, do you have any comment on that?
I think clearly we are going to see, and the airports will probably be one of the first places that we're going to be living in this different era. I personally will not question if they look a second or third time at my bag as it goes on the airplane.
Senator Bob Graham, thank you very much. Senator Chuck Hagel, thank you. And back to Bill Hemmer in Atlanta.
All right, Bob and Bill and the senators, thank you very much. We left off with Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. I want to get back to Jamie quickly. Jamie, you were talking about the call out to reserves coming up. I want you to clarify that again, but also curious to know about the current numbers that you're getting right now for the missing there at the Pentagon following Tuesday morning's attack.
Well, the current number is 190 missing and feared dead here at the Pentagon. That includes 126 military and civilian workers at the Pentagon and the 64 passengers on that American Airlines flight that slammed into the side of the building. It is possible that the death toll could go a little higher. Some of the people who are injured are very badly burned and could succumb to their injuries. The hope at the Pentagon is that 190 number will be the top level. They've pretty much given up hope of finding any survivors in the rubble. They gave up hope on that really yesterday. And they have now taken about 70 bodies out of the wreckage, and about 40 of those have been transferred to the U.S. Air Force Base in Dover, Delaware. Bill?
Jamie, also a pretty strong statement from a high-ranking official there at the Pentagon that gave us a bit of an indication as to what they're considering in terms of retaliation. He made it clear that this would not be what many have termed a pinprick, but rather a sustained operation. How much clarification were we afforded today there, Jamie?
Well, they're being at the same time vague, but also very forceful. The statement that you referred to came from Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz, who said that any military action would be a sustained campaign, not a one-time thing. But the message from all of the members of the administration has been that it may not, the response is not just limited to military action, although that seems to be in the future, but also political, diplomatic, economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure. It'll be a full frontal assault. And some interesting comments from Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld in an interview that he gave to CNN's Larry King that'll air later tonight on CNN, where he talked about this theme that has been struck by the administration of going after not just terrorists, but those who support them, whether they are host nations or whether they are, quote, non-state entities. But if you can't get Osama bin Laden, the theory is here at the Pentagon, then you can get the people who support him. And Secretary Rumsfeld said that if nations or others harbor terrorists or if they support terrorists, he said, even tolerating terrorists in your country, it makes you as responsible as the terrorists themselves. So a very strong hint going out that the United States is considering taking action, not just military, also economic, diplomatic, against those who support people like Osama bin Laden and other suspected terrorists.
Jamie, quickly here, what indications have you been given about U.S. military preparations, in a manner of speaking? Have aircraft carriers been moved? Have planes been on the ready? What are you hearing?
Well, there hasn't been a lot. The U.S. is already deployed around the world. The U.S. aircraft carrier Enterprise, which was supposed to return home from a stint in the Persian Gulf, has been told to stay in the Persian Gulf region. So that has one move. In the United States, fighter planes are on strip alert at 26 bases across the country, but that's basically for what they call homeland defense. That's while they still want to make sure that there's no threat of some sort of an additional terrorist commandeering of passenger airliners and that sort of thing. That will last for a while. But overall, The United States military is being brought up to its highest state of readiness, and today the Pentagon was told that it would get to $20, perhaps $40 billion more to help make sure that the U.S. military is at its highest state of combat readiness for the eventuality of being called on.
And some are suggesting that may just be the first initial payment. We shall see. Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. Thanks, Jamie. Here's Jerry.
To our viewers, we've been telling you that most of the nation's airports have been opened back up, at least for limited service in the course of this day. The exceptions being in ground stops at the big New York airports because of some detentions of people at JFK International Airport this evening. Also at Reagan National, flights have not gotten underway yet. The FAA, though, reports no additional reasons for security issues at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. However, Northwest Airlines this evening, which was to have resumed its flights, some of its flights around 6 o'clock tonight, has announced that they will not be doing that they will ground their planes at least for this evening because spokesman telling CNN that this was not a prudent night to fly. That is a quote from a Northwest spokesman. Again, Northwest Airlines deciding that they will not do any flights yet tonight. We will stay tuned and see if any other airlines follow suit. On other things that are not quite open yet, the New York Stock Exchange will not reopen tomorrow, but on Monday instead, trading to resume at the usual time, 9:30 on Monday morning. National Football League has made a decision to cancel Week 2 of the NFL season. Games to resume there on Sunday, September 23rd. Also, Congress passed a resolution today urging the country to fly the stars and stripes if you're not already. If you've been at all outside, you've noticed that most people, a lot of people anywhere, are doing that already. Several major retailers say they've run out of U.S. flags at individual outlets. Another note, a sign in the skies, combat aircraft patrolling above some major U.S. cities. You may notice them, including above Washington. In words and gestures today, U.S. officials are speaking unmistakably of their thoughts today. Bill.
I want to take our viewers back to New York. Videotape just sent to us here at CNN. A familiar face back in Manhattan. The former president, Bill Clinton, went near the scene there in Manhattan. After just returning from Australia, the president was stranded there, given the number of airports that were shut down. We shall listen to the tape and the hugging at this time.
And we need to know where he is.
Was this touch so much?
They're still fighting people. Don't lose hope. Thank you very much.
President, can you please ask everybody to just tell us, give us a lead, let us know where him and his co-workers may be.
Former President Bill Clinton back in New York today. Again, the videotape coming in just a short time ago. We have heard from several former presidents today. Former President George Bush, number 41, and also Jimmy Carter checked in yesterday and on Tuesday as well with comments. Joey talked about the swelling of patriotism that we are starting to see ripple in a bit of a strong wave across the country. So much of our focus is on New York and Washington, D.C. for obvious reasons, but in the New York Times today, this particular ad caught our attention. New York City and Washington, D.C., Oklahoma cares. You stood with us in our darkest hour. Now we stand with you, the people of Oklahoma and the Oklahoma City National Memorial. And they, too, have indeed had one heck of a year dating back to June, and for many people, closure with the execution of Timothy McVeigh. There's the ad that we see in the New York Times in its full page. And important to point out, too, here, I don't know if many people can take the pulse about what's happening globally, but I've heard from so many friends in England and in Germany and in Italy just over the past couple of days calling to make sure that everyone's okay back here. And also, they want to make the express point that they are behind what is happening here in the U.S. too. And I think that's critical because we've seen European capitals, specifically Moscow today, and also all over Germany today, taking time out in a 5-minute pause of silence. And we saw the Star-Spangled Banner at Buckingham Palace, which has never been done before, for the changing the guard there. And I think it's important to point out that as we see the wave ripple across the country, it's not just here, but it's overseas as well. And that's what we're sensing here outside of New York and outside of Washington, D.C.
Indeed, Bill. The darkest hour, indeed, the darkest hour for the city of New York, where so many people are still trying to find their loved ones, still hoping against hope that there will be some sort of good news, that they will be able to get some sort of positive information about those they love. CNN's Elizabeth Cohen has been outside the Armory, where so many people have gathered looking for additional information. Elizabeth rejoins us now there. Elizabeth.
Joey, yes, I'm at the Armory. They have, since the early morning hours, have been talking to families who are looking for their lost loved ones. The line goes around the block, and then when they come in, they give information about their loved ones, and they take it all down. They take down their phone number, and they tell them that basically what they can do is wait. Right now, we have here with us Sonia Rodriguez, who is going to tell us the story of a real hero. Let's talk about Fred Marone. He is your brother-in-law's father. Tell me how his morning started.
Well, he was in Jersey City in the office there when he found out about the first explosion, went through the tunnel. Last thing they knew was that as everyone was coming out of one of the towers, they were not quite sure which tower, he was going up to get his men because they have an office there at the World Trade Center. He spoke to his assistant director. He was in the stairwell and told them very calmly that he was fine and that he was just going up to get his men, which I believe their office is in the 60th floor. I'm not quite sure. And, well, the phone went dead, and that was it. There was no bang. There was nothing. It just went dead.
So Fred Marone is the Director of Public Safety for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which has offices in the World Trade Center, or had offices in the World Trade Center and in Jersey City. So he started the day in Jersey City. When he heard about the explosion, he didn't run away, he ran to the explosion.
No, this man is amazing. If anybody's going to be a hero, he is. He is like a bear, you know? We're all rooting for him because we know if he's okay, he's going to be fine. He's going to be helping other people. He's going to be motivating other people. He's going to be telling other people that they're going to be okay, you know? This man does not do anything. He has no self-acts. He's very selfless, you know?
Now, you went to the Armory today to register information about him, and you ended up staying. Tell me why you stayed.
Well, I saw that there was a lot to be done, and there were a lot of people who didn't know where to go and what to do, and I kind of just threw myself in. I was helping with the Salvation Army, feeding people, cleaning up, making sure that anyone who had any questions, if I was able to answer them, that, I was there for them. So I ended up staying, and I just got out.
It was amazing to me. You said earlier to me that very few people, you said only 2 in the whole time you were there, actually broke down. I mean, that's amazing.
2 people. Everything in the Armory right now is very well organized. Everyone knows their post, and they're speaking to people with a lot of sensitivity. And I can't tell you, I mean, for a day like this, everything inside is being well run. And so, people are very melancholy, and they're distraught, but they're holding in because people working there are being great troopers.
Now, after they register upstairs and register all their information, they go downstairs to look at some lists. Right. Tell me about those lists.
Right. This list is of everyone who has been identified, everyone who is in a hospital, whether, it's any of the main hospitals. Once you go through that list, I don't know if you want to know about the second list. The second list is a little, it's a sad situation. If you can't find the name of your loved one in the first list, they'll give you the second list of all the people that they may know something about, but that not all the information, but that they have found gone, that they've been gone. They're dead.
And I ask you this not to be gory, because I think it's important for people to realize how specific this is. I mean, the lists are bodies that they found.
Well, yeah, they're bodies that they found. The second list, they'll give as much information, as I said, as possible. They'll say, white male, blue eyes, brown hair. That's pretty much it.
Sonia, thank you. I know you've had a horrible day, and for your own family, but you've helped many other families.
Yeah, they
you've
also his family wants to let everyone know that they are so proud of him, and they're so proud of all the Port Authority officials and everyone who has been helping out. They want to give their thanks and condolences to all their family and friends if they haven't, found them. And Mr. Marone has a good troop behind him, so we're just doing the best we can. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to talk also with some other families who have gathered here. As you can see, we're catty-corner to the Armory, where families are coming to register information. And so the media is here. People are gathering to the media, wanting to tell their stories, wanting to give every detail that they can about their lost